You know what's interesting to me is, before reviewing this episode, what I've never understood about a lot of the fan base, a lot of the fans out there, amongst reviewing episodes, is that this, for some particular episodes, seems to be either an unpopular episode or just a forgettable episode. When you think about the great pantheon of great episodes, End of the World is not usually one of them, and admittingly, I'm one of them who's genuinely not necessarily forgotten. But when you think of, if I ask you, any particular viewer out there, what is your top 5 greatest Doctor Who episodes? End of the World's doesn't tend to be one of them, which retrospectively is an awful shame, because it's always been an episode I've always enjoyed, but it's also an episode that I don't really think of. However, with a review in mind, all I can say is, from a reviewer's perspective, that this is a highly enjoyable episode. I really enjoyed this episode, shockingly enough. I knew I would. But basically the point I'm trying to make is, when I view this leisurely, if that's the correct word I'm allowed to use, and when I watch things, when I know I'm about to review them, I tend to look at them from a different perspective. And I did, again, using the same mentality, and from both perspectives, either, watching this from an enjoyable perspective or reviewing it, enjoyable both times. Now, when I look at the behind the scenes stuff, which, by the way, there was heaps of it, I think it's fair to say that I should announce that they pretty much used their entire budget for this series on this particular episode. They spent the most money, is basically what I'm trying to say, on this episode. And to be brutally honest with you, you can see it, because the makeup and the prosthetics for the aliens is spectacular. It's just excellent. There's no fault to it. And putting into consideration, this episode is now actually, hang on, bear with me, 13 years old. And I actually put a little side note here. This episode actually originally aired on my 12th birthday, so people who know me personally will actually find out how old I am. But yeah, this actually aired on my 12th birthday. So hey, for those who care. Also, I wanted to wanted to mention and bring up as well, is the foreshadowing of Russell T Davies's key attention to detail. And for those who have already seen these episodes, which I imagine most people who decide to watch my reviews are probably nodding their heads what I mean by that, in terms of the introduction of the face of Boa. And given what we know now, obviously we look at his introduction in this episode in a completely different light. However, that being said, this is also I should mention, this is also the first episode the Time War gets properly mentioned, although there were subtle hints in the Nesting Consciousness in last episode. I also put a little side note here, love soft sell, and basically what I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I was speculating as I was watching this episode whether or not Doctor Who actually gave me an enthusiasm for 80s music. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, and I'm not saying I'm not. I'm just basically, the message I'm trying to put towards the viewer is how much of an influence Doctor Who genuinely has had in my life. And I remember, obviously, listening to Soft Cell when the Lady Cassandra in the episode, from an in-character perspective, plays that song. I remember when I originally first watched it, thinking it's a good song. And obviously, looking at it from another light, I don't know if it opened that proverbial door to show me, to give me a new appreciation for 80s music. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but it's just a nice thought, though. Also, I think it's worth mentioning is, I feel this is the first episode that you see Billie Piper's acting chops in this one. Now, What I mean by this is the problem I feel that when you're acting alongside a brilliant actor or an actress, and if that person you just happen to be acting with is a well-known name and is good at their craft, actor or actress, whoever they are, it might be you might struggle shining in your own light when you're doing a performance. Or I tend to get that impression with other people I've spoken to who studies in the performing arts. However, in this episode, I feel Billie Piper really gets a feel of her character Rose Tyler in this one. She portrays feelings of loss, of confusion and frustration in certain scenes to the Doctor when they had that sudden argument. And basically, she portrays, obviously at the time, the character Rose Tyler at this in this particular episode is 19 years old, and you just get a sense that she's having second thoughts. Was going off with the Doctor the right choice? And obviously, you got to put into consideration as well. You got to think about her mentality of, the Doctor and her are barely friends at this point. So it's worth thinking about. Random question as well. Why did the Doctor take Rose to the end of the world? Of all the places he could have took her, I like to think I know the answer to that question, but it's pretty much the equivalent of someone has a time machine and they say to you, do you want to go forwards or backwards in time? And obviously a lot of people have the mindset of wanting to go forwards in time for the subtle reason that they'd be interested in what technology will be available in, say, 10, 20 years in the future. Or you would like to know how people are, how people would dress. And it's the equivalent of someone with that said time machine taking you to see your own grave. Oh, isn't that exciting, watching your own grave? Now, I imagine a lot of people are looking at this with confusion, but people who understand the concept I'm trying to create here will be like nodding their heads again with agreement, because that's essentially what the Doctor has done, and basically, obviously, what I'm trying to say is the Doctor, I like the idea that Russell T Davies did. Again, his attention to detail is quite astounding in the fact that the Doctor, even though he has a moral code, and it shines through his morality, even in these earlier episodes, why should he think like a person would do? And obviously the Doctor is going to think like that, because he probably doesn't see anything wrong with that. And if someone said to you, would you like, and not just that, if someone said to you, would you like to see the time of the destruction of the Earth, you bet your curiosity would overwhelm you. Or anyone with an enticing mind would probably go along with it. I know I would. So yeah, I asked a hypothetical question, and obviously, hopefully, I hope you're happy with the answer I provided. Not necessarily, if not confirms, I like the idea of that when humanity go amongst the stars, that they will, how can I say this without sounding, for lack of a better word, perverted. But I do like the realistic dimension that Russell T Davies created of that when humanity goes out there, they will mingle and interact with alien races. And it also shows Cassandra's very ignorant mentality. Her views are very, I'm trying to think of a word to better describe it. To put it in a better way, she's very ignorant, and obviously she mutters that she doesn't like the idea. She feels she's the last human on Earth because the rest of humanity have mingled. I mean, to paraphrase what she said, have mingled, and obviously she perceives them as mongrels because they're not, in her mind, pure. And that's very interesting, that I genuinely thought, reviewing this episode, it showed the ugliness of people that have that sort of mentality. And I'm not going to go down that road, nor do I wish to want to go down that road. But the mere suggestion, the mere initiation of that mentality is enough for me to go, yeah, I know with Russell T Davies we're going on that one. The hint, not initiation, the hint is the better words that I was describing for. I also like it insinuates and sort of stresses the concept of the ugliness that what carries along with capitalism. Now, again, I'm going to try and avoid political topics on my channel. If you want to comment underneath whatever I say, feel free. I only ask whatever you say, no matter what your opinion is, please respect your other's opinion as well. Please don't have a little debate. Have a debate by all means, but please don't turn your debates into attack and start getting personal, or either attacking my potential viewers. If I see that, I will take it personally. So sorry to say that, but I am going to be frank with you there and then. Now, but basically, I do feel I have to stress the mentality of Cassandra, which I've already pretty much covered already. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is the ugliness of capitalism, and the fact that we have seen it in our own society, that of people becoming greedy and are willing to harm others to satisfy their own greed. We already have this problem in our own societies, and I think, and kudos to Russell T Davies for bringing and tackling such a social issue up. And I feel he did that superbly in The Perfect Villain, that is the lady Cassandra. The fact that she's willing to hurt all these people that was on the satellite, on the station rather, to get what she wants. So to paraphrase, to get compensation and to destroy her rivals. That, in a nutshell, I genuinely believe represents the ugliness of capitalism right there. Again, it's very interesting to me, because I genuinely believe, upon watching these episodes, no matter how entertaining they are, and 9 times out of 10 they are usually very entertaining, you do get a mindset of the writer's mentality upon viewing these episodes, and upon the Russell T Davies era. I don't like using that word because it's been overused. You do get a genuine mindset of Russell T Davies and his stance, I want to say, against right-wing views. Now, that's all I'm going to talk about politically. Now I've got that out of the window. However, that being said, I will also like to mention is that if people strongly feel that you shouldn't really write politically in Doctor Who or any other TV show, let me just say this. Strictly speaking, from an amateur writer myself, it is very hard not to get political in terms of storyline telling, in terms of character, or even to the bare minimum of just setting. Because no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what your circumstance is, politics are everywhere. And if you're just getting into the creative world, the chances are you are going to write something that is quite significant to you. You might not even be aware you're doing it, but I guarantee you will be doing it. And I feel basically the point I tried to make there is Russell T Davies does this in leaps and bounds, and does it in a spectacular fashion. I like how the Doctor and Rose bond, in terms of obviously bringing reference to the Time War. Obviously, this is the first time that the Doctor mentions it to Rose. I also like Christopher Eccleston's acting in portraying a man that has lost so much. And even though you got subtle hints of it in the last episode, you got an overwhelming amount in this episode, and you show a man that has genuinely lost his home, lost his family, lost everything, and all he's got now is a TARDIS, and obviously wants to share that with someone, and who better person than to choose that with than Rose. I feel it also gives you a sense of a strong friendship starting to develop in this episode. You see the threads, the basics of it. Very good episode. I have to admit, a lot better than I previously anticipated. And I'm quite astonished because I think I've covered everything. But all I will say is this. This is an episode that, even though has become widely forgotten in the mass continuity of Doctor Who, if you just happen to be watching this, I genuinely recommend, I strongly advise you give this episode a rewatch. Because I feel it doesn't receive the recognition and credit that it does deserve. Originally, upon reviewing this episode, I was going to give it an 8 out of 10. But all the boxes that what makes Doctor Who has been ticked. The acting is pretty much phenomenal. Money well spent. I am going to give The End of the World a 9 out of 10. Dancing Burr out.